This is the Boardroom Exchange. From Macro Capital.
I guess I'll jump into it.
Okay.
So, chicken or the egg? Journalism first before the business, or would you say you're an entrepreneur, from day one?
Look, when I can't figure anyone out and I'm interviewing them, I always talk about their family. I go, were you close to your parents? What did they do? That sort of stuff. And I was really lucky that my hero of my life and my mentor was my father, who was a terrific business person. Started in Adelaide in the sort of branch office of a big industrial conglomerate here in Australia, rose up to be the youngest chief executive of a top 200 listed company. And he always was really quite entrepreneurial. And he brought us up, well, all us kids up, with a saying, have enough confidence in yourself to give anything a go. If it doesn't work out, have enough confidence in yourself to go and do something else. And so I've always had a view, I love a challenge, I don't like being pigeonholed. I started doing an accounting degree, and one of the other students was married to Brian Frith, the finance editor of The Australian at the time. And I got to know him, and I was doing accounting part-time because I just got recently married and I needed money. And he said, you want to come and work on the business section of the Australian? So that's how I got into journalism, and then went and worked for BRW magazine, and during my time there bought the Stock Exchange Journal and convinced Fairfax to turn it into Australia's first personal investment magazine, and sort of started that personal finance type of journalism. I started that. So I've always loved it, and I started my first business with Fairfax as my joint venture partner and bought them out when they went into administration.
Good timing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So I've always had that. I just love doing things, doing different things.
You do a lot. You do a lot. I think one of the things that most Australians, know you from Sunrise, obviously.
Yeah. That's sort of the hobby that's got out of control.
Yeah.
I was asked to fill in
Right.
on that for 3 months.
Oh, that's how you started.
They asked me to fill in as host for 3 months because I was doing finance reports from them while still running my own business. And I filled in for one of the anchors who was sick. No one was watching the show back then. It was being absolutely slaughtered by the Today Show back then. And they said, could I fill in for 3 months? And
you killed
that's 19 years ago. So it just kept going. So I've always had my business, and that I class that as my real job. But Sunrise has just been a phenomenon. I love doing it.
I find it quite intriguing that it's been sort of a mixture of finance and journalism, and you combine the two really well. And it's like both of those industries separately, they're changing. Drastically. And Ausbiz, Pinstripe is probably a classic example of you combining those two paradigm shifts, I guess, with your work, and it's making some waves in the industries. I guess when it comes to so when you were in Sunrise, for example, so before this podcast show, I had to look into some of the other stuff outside of the engagement that we've had on Ausbiz, but I noticed you did a lot of like the personal finance corners of the show, a lot of books written about it. So again, kind of let's if we lean towards the finance side of things, and this is it's dear to me because I'm in the game. And it's like on the personal finance side, you have, and I was watching an interview, and I think you were giving tips on how to save money, how to grow a nest egg by the time, in 25 years. Great stuff. I loved it. Some of the things I went, I'm not doing that. I better look into that. But that was when I went, it's interesting because in finance, in the advisory game, whether it's stocks, you're giving advice too, right? You're saying, okay, well, this is the stock that you should buy, or this is the strategy that you should implement. But at the end of the day, there's that gap between those who know what to do. Anyone can know or can be told, put away 10% of your salary. I think one of the points you made, which this is for me, so I Uber Eats almost every day. You said don't buy pre-made food at the grocery store. I don't even get to the grocery store sometimes. So it's like, these are things that we know that we should do, but then there's that gap between execution. And I think it's discipline. I think it's willpower. Yeah. I guess in finance, and now AusBiz is very much finance orientated. And it's the same thing, but almost at a more sophisticated or intense level, because now you're going, hey, this is the advice, but if they, so when it comes to investments, psychological, mental discipline to not cut your losses, not let your losses run because you think it's going to come back up because you're hurting, and you know this, Kochie, right? You can't go in when everyone's greedy because you're going to get the peak of the price and everyone's going to. There's these, again, sort of tips, but the importance of that increases highly when it comes to financial stock market advice or commentary, which is what you've moved into now. So you've gone from personal finance to managing, or people managing self-managed super funds, right? Individual stocks they want to buy and sell. Do you think it's enough for us to say, hey, look, you should buy that, you should do? Is that maybe 10%? Would you say it's 90% of the equation?
Look, it's understanding your client. I've had a lot of rules. When I first got into personal finance, the reason I got into it was because back then there were no personal finance sections of newspapers. No one talked about it. There was just hard business news coverage with a whole bunch of finance journalists writing to impress chief executives of companies. Yeah. And because through Dad, I knew lots of chief executives and realised that the chief executive knew way more about business than any journo did. But the people who were missing out on information was the chief executive's spouse or brothers and sisters. And so I would write for them because you can make a difference there. I have a rule that I have never recommended anything in my life because that's not my job. My job is to match professionals like yourself and the information that you have with viewers and almost to be the interpreter, almost to be the person that says, it's not that hard to understand. Now, if you follow these rules, and I always say, what I do is give people thought starters to say, think about this, then go and get professional advice, because my edict always is the best investment you can make is to get good advice before you even start. So,
because it can get pretty complicated.
Oh, it can get pretty complicated. And also, to most people, finance is common sense, as we all know. In the market, it's not that hard. But people get a mental block because it's an inanimate object. They can't relate to it. It is, it must be confusing. And, even when we use terminology like 50 basis points, why do we say that? Why don't we just say, 0.5%?
Yeah.
Anyone can understand 0.5%, but 50 basis point, what the hell does that mean to a client or a normal person who has a real life and is looking for guidance on their money? So I've sort of always had these philosophies that if you can make it fun and relatable, then people go, he knows what he's talking about, and he's a good bloke, I can relate to him, I can actually understand him. And I reckon it's breaking down that fear that people have. You sell everything on a basic human emotion, whether it be greed, whether it be vanity, whether it be lust, whether it be fear. A lot of people sort of believe that the human emotion that drives people and money is greed. I think that's right. I reckon it's fear. It's a fear of losing everything. It's a fear of making a mistake. It's a fear of doing the wrong thing. So it's trying to help them overcome that fear with respect that says, I don't expect you to know everything. Just let me handle that, but I'm going to be completely transparent with you, and we're a partnership. And that's sort of the philosophy I've always had with money.
I think, and it shows, right? AusBiz, when it first came about, for me anyway, it was hard for me to initially differentiate it from, let's say, a news channel. Right?
Yep.
You know, you got the Bloombergs out there, channel Sky Biz, right?
Yep.
And then I realized from the segments that you guys were putting up, and it was this kind of very transparent, digestible content, because like we said before, it can get complicated. You know, I prepare for it, my analysts work with me, and I'm going, okay, so how much of this do I need to go into? And I think what you do quite well, especially at the call, is break it down for the retail investor. Say, okay, well, what does that actually mean? Because it's almost like there's this conspiracy out there where the finance guys, fund managers get all complicated because they don't want everyone to know they can do it themselves almost. And it's, you know, the power to the people, and I think that's technology is massive for that, right? But just to, I guess, unpack a little bit of what you spoke about, those levers, those emotional levers, the psychological levers of fear and greed for me have been quite core in understanding people. The markets are definitely psychological, and like you said, when it comes to the markets, you know, people say it's greed, but you know, there's cases to say, well, when the markets go down, they go harder than when they go up. There's stats about that, and it kind of shows or reflects the emotional components. But even in everyday life, there are levers in how you engage with people. And you know, as a business owner, as someone who's had a lot of influence over, you know, people that you're managing, shareholders, you know, all of the stakeholders that you're working with within your very vast and great career, I would assume that you've mastered that, right? You've mastered the ability to say, okay, well, this is what I want, and let's face it, we are in a capitalist society, and part of that is to engage with opportunities, and sometimes you need to make sure it happens, right? Whatever it is that you're trying to do. Would you say, and whilst we were walking in, Kylie mentioned we should bring up, from a business side of the coin, what would be really interesting is Port Adelaide.
Yep.
So you're known, again, something that you're doing. It's quite. I would call you a workaholic, but then you got Father of the Year award.
Yeah. But see,
how does someone do that?
I love everything I do. It's not like work, and I've got 4 kids, 6 grandchildren at the moment. 2 of my kids work in the family business. We're a really close family. We all still travel together and hang out.
You have a life.
It's one of the great joys of life. And I just love people. I love understanding people.
But it must get hard
people,
too.
learning from them. And it fascinates me. And I took on Port Adelaide. My dad used to play for them.
Okay, right.
So I've got a family connection there. I knew he would have been proud of me to be involved. It's our club. And I took that on the end of 2012 when the AFL rang me, and Port Adelaide just lost $7 million that year. It was on the verge of going broke. A lot of the Melbourne clubs wanted to boot it out of the AFL, believing that South Australia couldn't support 2 AFL clubs. And Andrew Dimitri rang me and said, can you give it a go? And I sort of checked the insolvency issues as a director. I said, as long as you back us in. And sort of basically re-engineered the business side of it, made it more entrepreneurial, built a sustainable business model. And, you know, we've been profitable the last, except for the last COVID year, which destroyed everyone's balance sheet and finances, for the previous 6-7 straight years. So, and we're a disruptor in football. We're a challenger brand. We were play a game in mainland China every year. It was built around trade and commercial that set us apart from the other AFL clubs, all with the objective of making sure the football department is fully funded, because that's the core sort of what you stand for. It's been going 150 years, Port Adelaide, so it's an amazing community organisation. But, that's, give something a go. And that's what I wanted to do, and it's turned out pretty well.
I feel like a little bit of a fraud when we speak about AFL, because I'm not built for it. I don't know. Did you play? Your dad played, but did you?
Yeah, Dad played, and then he got transferred to Sydney before AFL was big in New South Wales. Right. So I played rugby. I played grade rugby in the Sydney comp. Right. As a second row, played a few games of AFL when we had
you're
buys
huge.
in the rugby.
For those of you, you're huge.
I'm pretty tall. Yeah. So we're a big family, a tall family, all round. Got that from Dad, but. It's. I've been fascinated with professional sports organisation. Like I study them overseas because I want Port Adelaide to be world's best practice in terms of the business of sport. And in 2015, we were named by Sports Business Magazine in the UK as one of the 10 most innovative clubs in the world, across any sporting organisation.
Which is good.
I'm really proud about that. And because when I was first appointed, this club that was going broke and going nowhere and just couldn't think outside of its own postcode, I said at the press conference that I wanted to be world's best practice as a sporting organisation. And all the media laughed at me out loud, which was pretty intimidating. And I said, why can't we? Why can't we do things that no other club does? And, the China strategy, and we're the only Western organisation, sporting organisation in the world that plays a game every year in China with that COVID era for premiership points.
Tell me when it gets tough, how does David Koch get through it?
Okay, when it gets tough, I focus, and it has got tough. I remember interviewing Jerry Harvey years ago from Harvey Norman, and I would always interview him for TV or something like that, and then we'd finish the interview and then we'd start talking about my business. He was so, and is still so good in being inquisitive on how I'm going, how's the business going, and we just chat and shoot the breeze. I remember years ago, and I was sort of in my early 30s, and I just recently started the business, and he goes, Kochie, you've never been in business until you've been to the brink, looked over the edge, seen what it's like, and come back again. And I thought, what a grumpy old shit you are. Until it happened to me the first time, and subsequent times as well. And I thought to myself, he's absolutely correct. It is having the strength to get through hard times in business. And anyone who says they've never been to the brink, if they've been in business for a while, is lying to you. Anyone who says they don't have cash flow problems, I would have this media career having this imposter syndrome, thinking people think I'm so good at this, but God, I've got cash flow problems in my business. I read Phil Knight's biography, Shoe Dog, on Nike, and that entire book is how he coped with his cash flow problems in building Nike until he floated it, the day he floated it, for a couple of $1 billion. And I thought, oh my God, Nike had cash flow problems all the way through too. So it's understanding that you're no different to anyone else, but just understanding that you've got to stick with it. You've got to keep stress testing your business. You've got to keep stress testing yourself. And really not being afraid to re-engineer the model.
Do you believe that people are wired differently?
Oh, yeah.
And they might just not be able to do what you've said?
Yeah. And I think for any business owner, any entrepreneur, you've got to have the characteristics to actually cope with it.
What do you think those are? What are those traits?
You've got to have an appetite for risk. You have to be able to manage staff. I remember once, I think, we had about 160 staff at this stage, and it was during the dot-com boom in the early 2000s. Right. And just the staff issues were just annoying the hell out of me. And I said to my father, oh God, staff are so annoying. They don't give a stuff about my problems, but I've got to be motivator, I've got to be therapist. They want to share all their personal issues and financial issues with me. They don't give a stuff. And he looked at me and went, I'll sell the business. And I went, that's not very sympathetic. I was expecting kind words. And he goes, toughen up. That's part of the job of running a business, and unless you can cope with it, you shouldn't be in business, which I thought was a bit harsh at the time, but it was a really good lesson, that there are all of these things you've got to cope with. You can't begrudge it. You can't get angry about it. It's just part of building a business, and I think that's the secret. You've got to have the personality to be able to deal with it, and if you don't, it's better if you work for somebody else. That's as simple as that.
I like how you refer to the old man, because my sort of pathway or career into business was very much from him, as well as my old man, obviously. And I remember, so I mean, cash flow problems were it's a common thing. So he's experiencing that, and I remember this because, you know, we'd be having dinner and he'd finish a little bit earlier. He'd go outside and have a cigarette every night, and I could just tell that, you know, the stresses and pressure of his work was quite unlike maybe my other friends' parents, right? Anyways, fast forward, you know, when I'm in year 11, 10, year 10, 11, 12, he goes, what do you want to do? What's the go? And I said, I want to go into business. He goes, no, I'm not doing that. I was like, what do you mean? You know, and he goes, no, it's too bloody stressful. You don't want to live that life. And stubborn on me was like, no, I'm going to do it. I want to, you know. And for me, it was very much trying to support the dream that my dad had and has, and looking to, I guess, you know, build that. But it started off quite interesting, and I went through the ups and downs in a very short period of time of that early stage. So like, as in, started a company, nothing happened, boom, let's start again, right? And then, you know, obviously not 160 staff, but, you know, we've now got maybe 25 people. And it's interesting you bring up people. The management of people, for me, has been so crucial. And I think a lot of the problems that people face in running business, like you said, it comes down to, you know, obviously so many different factors, but it's actually real people. They're real people. And what I found was, it's like when I speak to people, when I manage my company, I like to, again, I have the luxury because there's only 25 of them. I couldn't do it with 160, obviously. But I'd like to understand, I actually do appreciate and understand and like to understand where they are. Because it's again like this, Kochie. It's like you've got two levers, fear and greed. And, you know, anyone, you know, rightfully so, is going to be motivated by those emotions. And when it comes to business and managing people, it's like understanding what is it that they fear and what is it that they want, and everybody is different. And that's the issue. I mean, it'd be great if everyone was the same, but you know, not everyone's the same, and they have their own individual problems. And for me, what I found was, and correct me if you think there's a better way to do it, because I take your advice in a heartbeat. But for me, what I found is that, sure, there's an inefficiency to it. But if I'm to get the most out of somebody, we can't be on different teams. You need to understand what it is that I want. And when I say, okay, let's do this, I need to express it and communicate it to you so that it's not, oh, I'm doing that because it's my job. It's I'm doing that because I understand what he's trying to pull through. I understand his vision. And, you know, it's that open-mindedness, I suppose. And it comes at an expense, and I think, you know, that's where the pressures come in, because it's not always happy days. And so I'm assuming that's when it wasn't, you know, that's when you came to the dad and you said,
because when you're at the brink, when the business is doing it tough, you've got to be positive the whole time. Can't, you know, you're walking around being happy, thinking, oh, if only they knew.
If they knew.
I'm just scratching to make payroll this and that, I'm not going to pay myself and all this. But I think it boils down to a respect for the people who work for you and who your customer is, just a respect and inquisitiveness.
You have that over me, though. Because you're Kochie.
Of people.
I'm just this young kid.
But
So you've got it a lot easier.
But see, when I first started the business, I was the youngest editor ever at Fairfax, which is now Nine Entertainment. When I started Personal Investment, I was 23 at the time. I kept telling people I was 30. For the next 7 years, they go, "How old are you?" 30, because I thought 30 you became legitimate, and then started doing it there. But getting the right team, understanding them individually, what motivates them, is really crucial. But they are a big asset. The biggest asset of any business is the business owner. Yes, staff are important. Yes, customers are important. But you drive the culture. You drive the dynamism. Anyone who says to me, "I haven't had a holiday in 3 years because of the business," get my sympathy, because I think, what a grumpy old bastard you must be. And, you must be getting close to burnt out and not driving the business properly. So I reckon it boils down to as business owners, professional development, making sure we have a balance in our life, to be able to perform at our peak each and every day. And I think a lot of business owners lose sight of that. They go, it's all about the staff, it's the team. Yes, it is about the team, but that's all driven by you. And you've got to have processes, you've got to have routines. I love learning from people. Jack Dorsey, I have founder of Twitter and Square. Imagine being MD of $2 billion companies. And because I said to him, how do you cope? How do you, just your life, how do you get by? He has this routine in the morning. He gets up, he meditates for 20 minutes. He does a 7-minute workout, which only needs a wall and a chair. So the meditation and the workout can be anywhere. It's a no excuse routine. You could be travelling, you could be at home, doesn't matter where you are, you can fulfil those. And his first appointment, maybe at work, or if he's travelling, wherever it is, from the hotel, he always walks to it, at least 45 minutes listening to podcasts. And so when he sits down at the start of the day, he goes, I have achieved this for me. I've improved myself mentally, physically, and in terms of my knowledge and professional development. And he goes, then I start on the business. But he has that routine every day. So I do a similar thing every morning at 3:42 a.m. every morning. When I get up to
3:42 is when you wake up.
I wake up at that exact minute every day. Don't do
why 2? Why 42? Why not 3:40?
Because every minute counts. Every minute counts. I leave the apartment. We rent an apartment during the week close to the studio, so I can balance my life, and then go home to our house on the weekend if we're not travelling for football. And it's that building that routine and process in my life. Like, I'm busy, but I'm a very processed type of person. I hate being late for anything. I hate people being late for an appointment to see me. And I get comfort. It de-stresses me if my day's organised. And that's why I'm really particular with that. So I have a routine in the morning. It's an ungodly hour, particularly in the middle of winter. But you get up, you do your workout, you get to the studio at the same time, do all your preparation, and then move into it. So I take, for me, my personality, that gives me structure, that makes me emotionally a lot more stable.
I think because most industries, you go to uni, you learn something. I feel like everyone is on a similar playing field. Not everybody, but but the different breed of people who have extraordinary success or have achieved, something that is unattainable to most. I think if we isolate it, a lot of the time it comes down to that what you're talking about, the protocols and things that are put in place. But you don't learn about these things. I mean, I would have loved to have been taught this kind of stuff a lot more and with a lot more importance, because again, everyone's got that general level of intelligence. I think. Let's say in the middle class or the high class, you have this category of people. They're all relatively the same, people. But why is there such large discrepancies? Right?
But you find things that suit you. For example, I go back to Mel and Cliff, founders of Canva. All right, so these two are early 30s. Current, most recent valuation they just raised another 90 mil in the US at a valuation of 8 billion.
Something like that.
1,500 staff, based in Surrey Hills, doubling staff every year, 100 million active customers. I first met them 6 years ago, 7 years ago, loveliest people.
Did you invest?
My worst investment decision ever was when they said, do you want to invest? I had to put, at the time, money into my business.
Oh, no.
And I didn't. That and being a shareholder in the Sydney Kings basketball team are probably my two worst investments. A lot of fun with the Kings, but financially not a great investment. But you look at Mel. These two are so young, they built a dream, they're coping with sort of massive financial networks overseas. They raise most of their money in the US. They're absolute darlings there. Every day, Mel puts at the start of the day 3 goals of the day. At the end of it, it's whether she's achieved them, 3 things that she's grateful for during the day. She does it every single day, the discipline to do that. Now, I'm not a journal type person. She is. She does it every day, and that's the way that she focuses. And she has this step ladder for goals with a sun at the top, and it is short-term, medium, long-term goals.
Obviously.
Yeah, designed on Canva.
Wow.
2 phenomenal people who have just that, they found what brings clarity to them, and clarity can be brought in a whole lot of different ways depending on your personality. So it's finding that way that suits you. It's going back to what my father's advice was, not being stuck in a job that you dislike because you're afraid to go and do something else. That go and do something else. Go and try it. And failure is just part of gaining that experience.
What now after, obviously you're in the Ausbiz and Pinstripe sort of, I mean, as a focus, would you say that's your kind of main?
Oh yeah, Pinstripe Media and Ausbiz are the but I invest in startups.
Yeah.
Invested in I'm in 5 at the
I'll have to pitch you for us soon.
Yeah.
You want to do that same thing with Canva twice now.
Oh no, well the other ones, I have a little pocketbook. I was a seed investor in who sold out to Zip.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a little insure tech at the moment, digital gaming startup, but in the esport area and gaming market. Advisor ratings.
Are you?
I like that.
Do you think you're going to? I mean, I get. But the question really is if I bought it's when are you going to say, okay, I've done enough. I'm champion.
No, you can never.
No,
do it.
I'll
never retire.
Never retire.
I'll readjust
like that, isn't it?
my life. Because I love it. I love meeting people. I love dealing with people. I love being involved in that professional sports area. That how do you drive peak performance? What can I learn from it? With coaches and professional athletes. I love the startup space. Ausbiz, I think, is a real challenge For us at the moment, it's going way better than we thought it would. We think we can replicate the model overseas. That's exciting for me going forward. We're sort of reinventing that media side of it. So, and Pinstripe, two of my kids are basically running it at the moment. I'm the chief bullshitter. They do all the hard work and the nuts and bolts. And so it's fabulous. I've been married for coming up to 42 years. Our relationship has never been better because we do things together. That's great. The business, the football, it's always involved, and grandkids just give you perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I look at your just whole demeanor towards and your attitude towards this race that really everyone's trying to run, which is whether it's in finance or media in general. Yeah. And I look at it and I do see sort of this, if I may be a psychologist, for a session, your mental health is, I don't claim to know you that well, Kochie, but from where I'm sitting, your mental health is very well taken care of, and that's where I think all the planning and all the structures that you have in place help. I read a survey that KPMG wrote out within the high growth ventures division, if I'm right, and they sort of surveyed all of the founders that they deal with, which there's a lot of startups that they work with, and it was mental health as a sort of prominent driver to success, one of the indicators, and that's a takeaway that I personally make from speaking with you about these things, and I guess that's why you can have that longevity, and that's why you're thinking, well, I don't need to retire. I'll tell you, me personally, and this is where like you're looking off the cliff when you get to the brink, right? And I've gone through that. We're in a much better position in the company now since those times. But there have been a lot of times, Kochie, where I was going, why am I doing this? I should have listened to my old man. And the things that got me through that were exercise. Eating healthier and structure to my day, and I think, and I think that's really important because that's all mental health. It's again something that they don't teach, and this is why that's
investing in yourself.
Yeah,
like every Wednesday and Thursday between 10 and 11, I go to a trainer. I originally thought personal trainers were for wankers until.
But this is the problem. Exactly, no one teaches.
But I schedule it in. I first went to Todd when I was training to climb Kilimanjaro for the first time. I've done it twice. And done Kokoda. And I've been with Todd now for 15 years, 16 years. And those 2 hours of the week, a bit of my time, he trains me for my age. Which is all about endurance and joints and all that sort of stuff. And he's the world's best bloke, and it just changes your life. And people go, an hour every day. And I go, well, start at 4 o'clock in the morning, so from 10 till 11, that's sort of my sort of lunch break, if you like. And then I come to the business and go through till 4, 5, get home in time. For Lib and I usually go for a walk around the harbour, watch the sunset, and in bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock. And that's investing in yourself to make sure that you cope and be disciplined enough.
I don't know how much time we have, but I wanted to ask you about just from a general perspective, again, you were Father of the Year. it's kind of crazy. But you've managed to, I would say, compartmentalize a lot of your life, and as a result, achieve what you set out to achieve individually for those things. On the family side, just let's revisit that because I think
incredibly important.
it's critical, right? And it's crazy the things that you do and that you're doing, the amount of stuff that you have on your plate. You say you've got the time. You say you're doing these things with them. But like, how are normal people who are trying to set out to make it in this world, right? Who haven't achieved this success, gonna get there without having a workaholic attitude? Do you think it? Do you think it's possible?
Liv and I had a rule when the kids were younger and at home that I could work as hard as I liked during the week. Weekends were for family, so I'd work my backside off during the week, and then weekends I'd be coaching basketball or rugby or netball or something like that. This is what a family does to ground you and keep you sane, because I could have the best day that I've ever had in my life, get home, the kids wouldn't give a stuff. You know, it was your dad. I could have the worst day in my life that the whole world was falling apart, get home, the kids still didn't give a stuff. And it was that consistency, that foundation that I think, again, for my personality, I really need. I don't need lots of friends. I don't have lots of really close friends, but I have a really close family and still a really close extended family. So that's, if you like, the rock and the foundation that keeps me focused, keeps me normal, and even today it's the same with grandkids. So it is compartmentalising life to make sure that the important things are done right. Our coach of Port Adelaide says football is the most important in people's lives. Football is the most important of the least important things in your life, whereas family, relationships and friends are the most important of the really important things in your life. And it's not losing sight of that.
My dad asked me, "Why aren't you married yet?" And I said, "I got to make money. I got to create a successful business and do that first, and then I'll do it."
See, I've never set out to make money.
Right.
And I haven't made nearly as much as most people think I have, and not nearly as much as I could have, but that's never worried me.
What's been the drive? What's been the drive then?
Success to me is a lot different to just money. Success is, yes, having financial security, but it's loving what you do. It's having good people around you and learning from them. And success is being able to balance that family and business, and also having a life and enjoying your life. And like, we did things, I set up the business that we took the kids out of school for 8 months and lived in Europe for 8 months in the middle of everything, because they had privileged life. Living on the North Shore of Sydney, I didn't want them to grow up as North Shore princes and princesses. And we lived in 4 little villages in Europe, not in the cities. Homeschooled, did all that sort of stuff. And they still say it's the greatest experience they've ever had, and has sort of really bound the family together, but gave them an appreciation of different cultures and different people. So that's what I try and achieve.
Yeah, and so much more than meets the eye, and which is great, Kochie. I appreciate you really opening up. I think your family has really been probably one of the main reasons for the success as well.
Without a doubt.
Right? Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Again, everyone's different. And I find it very hard to relate because I've never had kids. Right? I'm not going to be that guy who says, "Oh, I can understand." I know I can't. Right? I can try.
Until you have your first, you've got no idea.
You've got no idea. No. But from what I hear and what what the old man says. It's sometimes an even bigger driver, or the benefit is larger than, let's say, the negative if you're doing it alone. And so, or if you have the kids. So like you said, you go home, sometimes it's tough because you're having a tough time, and now you've got all this responsibility that you need to take care of. And that is a
who do you de-stress with? All of that. And it can be a close friend, it can be parents, it can be brothers and sisters.
Do you rely on it a lot? Do you think?
Oh yeah,
right.
I have my whole life.
Yeah.
Liv and I got married really young. We had kids deliberately while we were young, so we could grow up with them as well and relate to them when they were older. Again, that's just us, and it suited us. It's not for everyone, but that's it's worked.
So
really good for us.
I'm going to wake up at 3:42 and have some kids, and then I'll be good.
It's making sure you got your balance, understanding what the priorities are in your life. Money shouldn't be the driver. It should be enjoyment, sense of success, sense of excitement, a wonder. Your life's got to be full of wonders.
Do you ever get tired though and go, geez, I'm doing a lot?
Oh yeah.
I'm doing a lot. Do you ever go, oh, man.
Yeah, there are times where you do, but usually, I've broken the discipline. Whenever I get grumpy, I'm really stressed at football because, AFL clubs are just medium-sized businesses but have so much focus on them and have a massive responsibility to their communities. So we can lose the love of it regularly if you get too stressed about it. And I talk to my grandkids who are passionate and they're wide-eyed and one, how's Bokie going? Robbie's little kids, they'll, what a great win we had. And that's the essence of what football is. Football should be about joy, should be wonder. And sometimes you've got to look at things through other people's eyes to be reminded of that.
Well, Kochie, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it so much. It's all of my friends are, because they see me on the call every now and again, and I post it up on place. I'm like, hey, guys, what's he like? What's he like? Well, here you go, guys. That's what he's like. You're an inspiration, I think, to a lot of people. A lot of people who don't know that there's a lot more than a TV host. Yeah. Right? It's a massive operation that you're running, and I think you've sort of enlightened us with what it really takes.
Oh, that's kind of you.
So appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll have you back on.
Good on you. Awesome. Anytime.
Thanks,
Conrad.